Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and you guys know my story. I'm a recovering political hack, recovering lawyer. Spent years working in politics, including as a speechwriter with stints in the Clinton White House for a California governor. And 10 years ago, I discovered this great medium of podcasting. I've been doing it ever since because I get to talk to smart individuals like my guest here today. Everyone from YPO to EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, you name it. So many great people that I've been able to have a great conversation with. And before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Fran Biederman-Gross, who introduced me to today's guest. Fran is the co-author of How to Lead a Values-Based Professional Services Firm and founder of Advantages. You can check her out at advantages.net. And my guest is Cesar Quintero. Cesar immigrated from his he was born in the United States, but then grew up in Venezuela. And he came to the United States, came back to the United States in his early 20s, leaving behind a secure job at Procter and Gamble. And just for kicks, he also decided, I'm going to get married and I'm going to start a business at the same time. Had a few years of ups and downs, which we'll go through in this interview. Grew the business to a couple $1 million in revenue, and then started looking further to get more support on how he could break through that ceiling. And he joined EO, Entrepreneurs Organization in South Florida, also completed the MIT Entrepreneurial Masters Program. And then later, 2012, hit rock bottom with, which we'll talk about in this interview, with a lawsuit that took the wind out of his sails, you might say. And now, today, he helps businesses to implement the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, based on the book Traction by Gino Wickman. Check out my past episode with Gino. Great stuff. And we will talk all about that. This episode, of course, is brought to you by Rise 25 Media. If you are interested in having a podcast for your B2B business to get more clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships, you can learn all about it at rise25media.com. Cesar, such a pleasure to have you here. Fran sung your praises, so I'm super excited to talk to you about your background. But take me back in time to Venezuela. You know, the country's had a rocky time over the last 20 years. Yeah. But you're living there. You'd been born in the States. Your family had gone to Venezuela. And then the economy drops out and you say, we got to get out of Dodge. And what was that like?
Yeah, so I even went to university there. So I studied industrial engineering, and I started working with Procter and Gamble, as you said. So I had like the highest paying job. It was amazing corporate, it was a global entity for Latin America. So I was at the corporate headquarters there. Argentina, Chile, Mexico, I was traveling all over. It was great. But yeah, the economy started crumbling, and that's where I realized at 24 is like, I don't think I have a future here. So I went from, my earning went down fivefold in one day because the Bolivar back then fell. And so I was making like $300 a month, I think it was at the end.
Once the bottom fell out?
Yeah, and then it's like, I don't think this is sustainable, like I would travel to Argentina, and 2 nights of hotels was more than my monthly salary. So I'm like, this isn't working well. so that's when I, and that's when I told my girlfriend at the time, so my high school sweetheart, I told her, you know what, let's just get married, move to Miami, start a business all at the same time. And why not? Because there's no risk at this age, right? So,
right.
So that's what I did. And I started in a food industry, which, of course, nobody thinks about it. Everybody needs to eat. So I started Fit to Go, which is we cooked and delivered healthy meals to people in their office. And
there's so much complexity in that. I remember reading about, Munchery, may it rest in peace.
Exactly.
Which was a big, food delivery business. Yep. And I remember reading an interview with the founder, and he said, essentially, you're building 3 businesses at once. It's like Correct. A web-based business, a distribution business, and a food business.
Exactly.
And so it's a similar type of thing for you.
Yeah, and I remember starting the business up. I was trying to see, how do I outsource delivery? How do I outsource the kitchen? I was trying to see how to, but all of these elements were so fundamental to the core of the business. And mind you, this is 17 years ago. So this was pre-Facebook, pre-Uber Eats, pre all of that. So yeah, I developed the centralized kitchen. Of course, the permitting alone, and that was, when they said it took 6 months, it took a year and a half. So my wife wasn't very happy that we were engaged for 2 years, because I was not going to get married until I started the business, started making money. So yeah, it's all the issues that most entrepreneurs go through. So I think I was just victim of eternal optimism, not calculating correctly the times and the money, and money needed to get started. And then also I went into a business that I needed to educate my market. So back then I needed to go door to door, give out free meals, and convince people it was convenient to have your meals delivered every day, right? So it was, talk about a little ahead of its time. It was like I needed to preach and make sure that people changed behaviors. So that was a tough
hard
business
for
to get
any
started.
business.
Oh,
It's
man.
super hard. Yeah.
And in a business, and what the Montreal said, it's a business with low margins because it's food, and logistics are hard as, I don't know if I can swear here or not, but
Yeah, you can.
so are really hard as shit, right? So
Yeah.
you got logistics, and it's hard and low margin.
Right.
It's a very tough business.
And
for sure.
and if something goes wrong with the product, someone eats it, they could die, right? If something,
exactly.
right? So there's kind of high consequences.
Yeah.
So nevertheless, you power through, you get it up to $1.5 million in revenue, but you feel like that's the limit of your potential. Why did you feel like you couldn't break through at that point? That seems like that's a very small number of businesses ever reach that point.
Yeah, I know. I think I started growing. The market started growing with it too. So that's when people started. It was two trends, right? It was healthy and delivery. So two trends got us, and we started growing. I had like 27 employees, 1.5 million back in the time, but I was doing everything. I was running like a chicken without a head. I was delivering meals. I was subbing for the cook that didn't show up. I was answering phones, at night if somebody did. So I was always, I guess I didn't know how to lead. I started a business that I became enslaved to, right? And I think that's when I learned about EO, Accelerator, and the Entrepreneurs Organization. And that was my first step of really understanding that I needed to decentralize me, right? I needed that being an entrepreneur, because I think it was also part of my childhood upbringing, being in Venezuela, my dad being an entrepreneur, my mom being in corporate and Pan Am and all that.
What did your dad do?
Workers.
What did your dad do?
He had a water treatment, chemical and equipment. He has it still, chemical equipment and stuff distribution.
In Venezuela?
In Venezuela, now they're in Panama, Costa Rica. They're all
Okay.
over Central America. They had to go, but.
So how did that prepare you to become an entrepreneur yourself?
So I saw, and that's part of what I was trying to say is that, my parents were really hard workers, and I think they come from the era of work hard, not smart kind of thing. And
Right.
That's what I grew up in. So like I worked since I was 7. I would be the guy passing, going through the fax machine and stamping faxed, and those were all the invoices going out, right? And I was all summer just sending invoices. And
Younger
faxes.
listeners right now are saying, I don't understand what he's
So what's
talking
a
about.
fax? What does that mean? So yeah, exactly. So, that's a world I came from. So in my mind, as an entrepreneur, I need to be working 100 hours a week. If I'm not working enough, it's that I'm not putting enough effort into my company. And that's when I realized, I remember, pivotal books, of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 4 Hour Work Week. When I read 4 Hour Work Week, that was a mind shift, right? For me, it was like, wait,
Yeah.
What do you like? I can really cut down my time and be more efficient for real.
For many people, yeah.
Yeah. So that really shifted my mindset. Also, the Entrepreneurs Organization, all of this. And that's when I realized, you know what? I need to learn how to work smarter, not harder.
Right.
And,
And what were some of those key decisions that you made? You have got 30 people working for you at this point, but what did you do?
So I would say there were two pivotal things that happened to me. The first one is, you mentioned it in the intro, the 2012 realization. And I got hit with a class action lawsuit. So I was around 1.4, 1.5 when I got hit with that class action lawsuit. And the reason was I was the 5th company that I was victim to a girl and an attorney that they were going company by company. And I had contractors who were drivers who had their equipment. So it was Uber before Uber kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I had a fleet of 13 drivers, and they, it was a lawsuit that, as a
on behalf of the
contractor
drivers.
Yeah, it was and it was only 3 new drivers. All of my drivers banded with us. But at the end, 2 of the old drivers or 3 of the old drivers joined. So at the end, it was a baseless lawsuit. It got, dismissed by the judge towards the end. Of course, they didn't file federal; they went local. But what that meant is that I needed to fight it all the way through, and it was my ego. It was just I needed to prove that I was right.
Did it drain your savings?
Yeah, and she said, "Hey, I've bankrupted 2 companies before." She said that to my face, and she still worked in my company. I couldn't let her go because then it would be a retribution lawsuit, right?
So this is working in your business. Wow.
So working in my business, she put flyers from my competitors in my bags to my customers. Wow. And I could not fire her because, so it was very tricky. I took it very personally. I remember that year was one of the worst years of my life. My daughter was born. That's a high. But then at the same time, I was hit with this. My health started deteriorating. I developed this immunological gout. Like it's a weird form of gout. And I remember it was Black Friday in 2012, and everybody was out shopping, and I was like $0 in my bank account, 0 in my business, 0 in my personal account. And I was wheelchair bound because I couldn't walk. And I was like totally depressed. And also in a healthy food business, as you can imagine, after Thanksgiving, nobody wants to eat, right? Healthy. Yeah. So it's like it was just bad. And that's when I realized, you know what? Something needs to change. Something needs to change here. And that's when I met Fran, actually. I met Fran on that February 2013. And she did a why discovery for me. So she was, her history with Simon Sinek and how she helped him and case study and the whole thing. So she did a workshop for us about, unlocking our purpose and understanding our true why. And that's when I realized, you know what, I've been wrong all along. I've been 7 years in this business, that I was focusing on the wrong things. I was focusing on my service, on my product, on proving the system, on proving that I'm a good leader, proving that I'm a good entrepreneur. And what I really was passionate about is about empowering those around me so that they could live the life they want to live, right? So my why is to empower others so that they can live a life by design. And that's something that I've carried through since that time, because I realized that I shifted my focus and I stopped worrying about my business, and I started worrying more about my people. And that's where my shift completely focused on the people around me, my managers. And that's where I learned about EOS, which is a banner behind me, and Traction and the book. And I started, being more vulnerable, understanding that I wasn't the leader that had to point out where we needed to go. And that's when I started saying, you know what, this is not about me, it's about us. And they put that into evidence when they stood up and they said, you know what, this is bullshit, and we're going to fight this, and we're going to make this work. And this is not, because I felt defeated. I felt completely defeated. I'm like, all these years of hard work are going down the drain because of my ego and me wanting to prove that I was right. And my team is like, you know what, we'll band together. There's nothing that unites a team more than a mission. And we got through it, man. The next year was our best year yet in profit.
Wow.
Like they banded, and my managers were like the best. And I realized that I was the wrong type of leader. And when I started understanding that my focus was on them and not on the product, not on the customer, not on my service, it pivoted our business. And we went from 1.5 to 3.2 within like 3 years. Wow. Because I was the source of issues in my business, and I just didn't face it,
Yeah. And that's what EOS is really about, is helping direct people into the right role that they should be in. Right.
Yeah.
So
just because you start a company doesn't mean you have every role in it. Right.
Right. Looking back on it, is there anything, what if anything, would you have done differently leading up to before the class action lawsuit?
Yeah. So first thing for anyone listening to this podcast is EPLI. That's Employee Professional Liability Insurance. That's something, it's an insurance that's pretty cheap. It's not that expensive. It covers wage and hour and all these things, especially with any, sexual harassment, all of these things. And my lawsuit could have been so much cheaper. At the end, there's good news on both fronts. The first was she only got $500. That's all I wanted. Her attorney, on the other hand, being
got the attorney's fees. Yeah,
her attorney got all the.
Doesn't matter if they get a dollar. The attorneys can get But I wanted to prove a point. Yeah.
But you know what? It was the worst and best thing to ever happen to me, because I think that experience taught me a lot about me and myself and my place as a leader in the world, for sure.
Wow. What was it like when you first read Traction, or when you learned about EOS? Or did you have an implementer who came in and worked with your business?
So you know what happened? Through Entrepreneur's Organization, I had read Rockefeller Habits, Scaling Up. I was a part of the accelerator program. So I knew these concepts well. I always had as most business owners, we were implementing and reading things here and there.
Yeah.
And I think my mistake is what I see most entrepreneurs out there do is that they're trying to implement them themselves versus having someone in your team do it and create consistency. Because there's no one that wants to be in a meeting less than me, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no one that wants to follow a process than me.
Yeah.
So let's have somebody else do that. And, I had enough experience that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to implement this myself. So I went to Basecamp. I did this. And for about 8 months, I was self-implementing. And that's when I realized, this doesn't work very well. So I asked my friend Todd Smart in Chicago. He's like, hey, can you help me, implement a bit? And within 3 months, he had done all I did in a year. Right. So that was enough. I just
take us through what he does, what he did, how he changed the structure of your business or the meeting rhythm.
I think the first thing that changes is that when you are the owner of the business so I was the owner of my business and I was implementing in my own company, I had too much of a voice. So I'm facilitating, I'm teaching, I'm trying to get people on board and I'm trying to hold people accountable. And it was too much. Like their voices wasn't being heard. When I brought a third party in, when somebody else says A, and I've been saying A all my life and everybody's like, no, but it's you saying A, but somebody else says A, then we believe him, right?
Right.
So it's just bringing another person, into the fold. That's a third party. They have no vested interest, no personal interest, and people would listen and people would understand, and there's no personality issues, because even if I'm implemented, even if I was doing it perfectly to the T in my own business, there's feelings involved,
mm-hmm.
right? So I think that was a main difference. It wasn't so much on what I did or what he did. It was more about the perception of the team and the commitment of the team. Also paying makes a difference as well.
Right.
Now you're paying for somebody to come in. And
right.
Everybody better get in line,
Right. But now you've implemented this for 40 plus companies.
Yeah. So actually the story's great. Fit to Go kept growing. And after EOS, after 2 years, my leadership team was running my business. And I was like going to events and socials and things. I was networking. I started coaching on the side to restaurants that wanted to deliver. So I started SaaSing, I did a SaaS on my software. And then this was before Uber Eats. So there's a pattern here that, when Uber Eats came out, I'm like, fuck it. I'm not competing with Uber Eats. Right.
Really? So when you saw that, you're like, okay, this is good. Okay.
This is enough. Yeah. So, but that's what started me in coaching, because I started coaching different restaurants on how to be more efficient, how to deliver, how to do all these things, how to create a recurring business model within restaurant world. But restaurants were very mom and pop, and it was really hard to coach because they're typically not that business sophisticated. So that's when I started, let me teach accelerator. So I started teaching an accelerator group. I started teaching different things. And that's when I developed this. I'm like, wow, I really love coaching and implementing and do these things. And it aligns with my why, right? It's empowering people around me.
Yeah.
So it's like, perfect. And that's when Todd said, you know what? You should be an EOS implementer. You did it in your company. You're a good success. And then Chris Jones in Canada also said, it's like, he also showed me the ropes a little bit. And that's when I started implementing. So I started implementing 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Wow.
And this is so that's around the time you sell your business, right?
Yeah. So So exactly. So when I can prove that I can coach and have my business at the same time, I decided to sell 50% of my business because in my mind, I still wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to be a consultant, right? So I still want to have my business on the side, but I don't.
You had some hangups in your mind about what this new role was.
Yeah, I never want to be called a consultant, because I hate consultants. It's like being a salesperson,
right?
And not liking salespeople. So and thank God EOS implementation is not consulting because we just teach and facilitate. But for me, it was a lot around giving the entrepreneur hat out. So I sold 50% of my company. I sold pretty well.
And you sold to 2 people on your leadership team.
So the first time I sold to my chef in 2017.
And how did that break that down for me? Did you approach this person? Did they approach you? Did you shop it around on the market?
It was interesting. I was thinking about selling half of my company, and I had hired the chef. He came because I was tired of not having people at the executive level, at the level that could take you to the next step. So I hired this chef that came from the best exclusive country clubs and all this. And he worked for us for a year. We were trying to expand to different cities. And a story around this business is that whenever you expand, it's really hard. So every business that has expanded in food and in the delivery side has not been successful. So we were not being successful in expanding to Orlando and Tampa. And that's when he said, you know what? This looks like a great business. I love you as a leader. I love the business. I love the culture. Why don't I come in 50%? And I'm like, great. So it was a perfect way because I was trying to get out of the operational side of the business. And then when he offered that, and we weren't even thinking about it, but then it's like, okay, now you become operational partner and I'm more of the outside, financial partner. So that's the way it worked. And then we were going through the process last year as well. And then COVID hit. And that's when I said, you know what, I've been growing my practice. I wanted to start a firm. I wanted to do different things. And so I sold it to my operations partner and my operations manager. So the chef and I got together and we said, you know what, she would be perfect for this. She had been with the company 5 years. She also came from Venezuela, $1,500 in her pocket. And now she owns a multi-million-dollar business, which is amazing, So it's talk about empowering people around you so they can live the life they want to live. So it just aligned with my purpose. It aligned with what he needed because I was no longer there. So he needed somebody to help him to be part of that. So Frances came in and she bought the other 50%. So.
And when you sold it to your chef, were there how did it change the dynamic? Did anyone, any hard feelings? Was it weird when you explained it to everyone or was it seamless?
He was already working inside. There's always a transitional period. If Josh looks at this or hears this podcast, there was something that he thought EOS was the Cesar way. So he's like, no, let me do some things the Josh way, right? You want to do one-to-ones and do different things. And he started dismantling EOS little by little, something that was working so well up to that point. But he wanted, he's an operating partner. He wanted to have his voice. So my manager's kind of like, wait. We're not changing this. This works. So he learned how to come back to it and then find different things on where to make his stamp. But he's been amazing, and the business is so much better because you know what? There's nothing worse than a business where its owners or founders have no passion for it anymore. And that's what happened to me after I got burned out, and after I found another passion. I was doing different things. I did a disservice to my company because it just plateaued. It just plateaued because I wasn't passionate about it. Yeah. I wasn't pushing it through anymore. So and I should have sold it all 3 years ago. I should have sold it all, but my head trash had me caught in it, right?
Would you have shopped it around in retrospect?
Yeah, probably. Although, the 2 people who own it today are so much better for it. And I think it aligns to my purpose, but I don't reminisce. So everything that happens for a reason, and we all learn from the process. So it's always easy when you look 2020, it's 2020 hindsight. I'm very blessed on where I am and the outcome. So Yeah.
So we're at the end of January 2021. You mentioned COVID, which has been happening over the last year or so. What was it like for various different clients of yours? Give me some examples of some who are harder hit by it.
Yeah, so the most hardest hit, of course, are service companies that are hand to hand. So a physical therapy company, a swim school, so people who are more in the trenches. But I'll tell you the truth, and I'm actually going to send a survey out because I just finished annual season, and everybody, like I would say, 85%, 90% of them have really outperformed what they thought they would do last year, even pre-COVID, right? Their goals from last year, and I think that's one of the things I love about the EOS system and traction is that it's done for wartime periods, right? It's agile. It's every week you're pivoting. You're trying to get to the quarter. Every quarter you're pivoting. You're trying to get to the year. Every year you're pivoting. You're trying to get to the 3 year. So it's a very agile process, and it's a war room style meeting every week that you have that you just pivot. And I've been amazed. I ran 26 different annuals right now. This was a crazy annual season.
Wow. And is that my last? Is that a whole day or a half day?
It's full 2 days. So I've been doing this since mid-November to now. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Today was my last one, but to be honest, I'm surprised. Not surprised, but I can say what I love about this process is I can see the impact it has in business. I would say 100% of all the businesses I work with retained all their employees. And they made it work, and they surpassed expectations, and they pivoted, and they made it work. So it's just a testament of the system and how it works, right? And how everybody's empowered to really pivot and make it work. So
that's great. So now you've got the new business. So talk a little bit about what you're excited about now as we head into 2021. Hopefully, getting past COVID.
So of course I sell my business in August, the final 50%. So I finally pass the page, and then I say, you know what, I'm starting two things. So I started a firm it's based on the Profit Recipe. So it's an EOS firm here in South Florida. We're the only firm who has me certified in South Florida, and I have 5 different partners, and we're all implementers, we're all immigrants, we're all ex-entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. So we all know what it means. We've all implemented EOS within our companies. So it's a great team. I went from product blue collar to service white collar. It's like grass is greener.
And is that how you work? So you're not working with restaurants now then?
No, I'm not. No. So I'm EOS implementing. I've been EOS implementing for 4 years. So I haven't worked with restaurants in 4 years. Yeah. Well, I do have one client. I have one client that's a chain of restaurants. But
how does your experience, your background building, a restaurant business, how do you talk to a B2B business owner and relate to them?
Yeah. So most of my businesses, actually, what I love about EOS implementation is that we are not the expert in their business, right? They are. That's why I don't consider myself a consultant. I don't diagnose. I don't prescribe. I'm an expert in the EOS model and how it works and how to make it work. The people in the room are the experts in their business, are the experts on how to get it ahead, right? So what happens is most businesses is that they have people, right? And people are the issue in every company. Vendors, contractors, clients, employees, people are the issue, the main issue. 82% of people are the issue of all problems. So this is a system that helps you, create alignment and vision. It helps you create accountability and traction, and it helps you align a healthy team, right? And health and team. So what I teach is the principles, the system, and I get the hell out of there, right? So that's what I love about EOS is I just teach a system. I go in, teach a system, they get it, they do it, they're the experts, and then they carry with it. I train someone within the company to take this on, and that way they don't need me anymore. So that's what I love about EOS and implementation is that it's not coach dependent. I can teach you the model and get out of there.
That's great. Well, Cesar, this has been great. We're running a little short on time, so I'm going to wrap up with the 2 questions I always ask, which is,
sir.
First, just I'm a big fan of being grateful, expressing gratitude. So if you look around at other peers of yours, which you could interpret broadly, it could be others who you know through EO or EOS or other facilitators, implementers, that sort of thing. Who do you admire? Who do you respect who's doing similar types of work, doing good work these days?
Oof, I would have to say Scott Fritz would be number one. He was my accelerator trainer. He's the one who really made me Click. He's down in Las Vegas. I would say Fran Biederman Gross, of course, of allowing me to empower me with my purpose and my voice. Govind Jaharan from Ontario, Canada. He made me believe in myself and that I could do this. Because of course I'm like, why would I be an implementer? Nobody would hire me. So he's the one who made me face that fear. And then Todd Smart and Chris Jones are my mentors through the EOS journey. Of course, that's been amazing. And then, let's pretend we're at an awards banquet, much like the Oscars or the Emmys. You're receiving an award for lifetime achievement for everything you've done up until this point. And if we look backward in time, further back in time, were there any mentors? Were there any coaches? Were there any investors? Were there any people that you would acknowledge from your childhood or early days of entrepreneurship who you would acknowledge in your remarks? It would have to be, it's going to sound corny, but it would have to be my mom and dad. My dad, first of all, for being such a visionary and seeing the world for what it was. The life I grew up in was completely different than most of my friends in Venezuela because he was a true entrepreneur and he wanted to put me, and I was an entrepreneur since I was 14, right? So he put my feet on the fire and let me learn. And then my mom for integrity, consistency, doing the right thing, and really calling out bullshit when I'm treading that line of, the Latin world of, is this right or is this wrong? So my mom's like, no, this is a right way of doing things and you would do the right thing. So I would definitely say, kind of corny, but mom and dad. That's all right. All right. TheProfitRecipe.com is the website. Anywhere else, LinkedIn, anywhere else that people should go to connect with you, Cesar? Yeah, it's just, it's under Cesar Quintero. So it's Cesar E. Quintero in LinkedIn or Facebook. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Cesar. Thanks for having me, John. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
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 And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.